Hey everyone. So I just wanted to do a video because I haven't. There's a couple of good videos about the CC75 P01 compared to the 75D compact. Also, that's my cat. Hello. Okay, I'm gonna keep that in. Compared to the 75D compact PCR. Both of these guns are not stock, but I did want to do a quick video kind of comparing the two of them, comparing and contrasting, because there are some really good opportunities for carry guns out there, and I think these two are often overlooked. The one on your left-hand side is the 75 P01. This is the 75 compact aluminum frame model. It's got a cool NATO serial number. And it has a 1913 rail on the bottom of this. It is actually a 1913 slot. You can see my Streamlight TLR1 HL with a 1913 adapter in here that will fit on very snugly, but will still fit on, come on, there we go, onto this. I'm not going to tighten it down, but it's on there without any kind of issue. You can also put the Glock adapter on here and it'll fit just fine as well. Be a little loose, but that's not a problem. I've had this gun for a while. This gun I had a long time ago. I sold it to a friend, and then I just got it back recently, so that's awesome. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to get back into carrying aluminum frame or metal frame pistols because I shoot these really well. And this is a really good carry gun, so let me talk about that for a little bit. This is the 75D compact, also known as the PCR. Sometimes you'll see PCR stamped or rolled on the slide here. This is very much like the P01. However, big difference. The clearest difference is this one does not have a rail. This is just a slightly shorter frame. So it's pretty much the same frame, but it's ever so slightly different on the front. And then the slide, whereas the 75 P01 has the rails going all the way to the front of the slide. Yes, rails on the slide and rails on the frame. You have full length on pretty much both of these. The slide rails on the 75D only go to the end of the dust cover on here. Another big difference is the 75D has no snag rear sights. I'm not a huge fan of these, but if you take them out, there's actually a flat spot, whereas the serration that goes along the top of the gun kind of stops to fit those sights. You do have a decocker on here, so double action, single action with a decocker. This is a lot like the SIG 226, 228, or 229 decockers. So once you release, you can slowly let it down, or kind of slowly let it down, versus something like an H&K where you decock and just slams back. Not a big problem, but it's just something to be aware of. These are aftermarket grips. They're the slim grips on here. I like these grips quite a bit because I've got medium hands, and if I'm by the way, the gun's empty. If I'm in double action mode, my finger falls right on the correct place on the trigger here, versus if the grips are larger, I gotta really have a perfect grip to get the right kind of reach on the trigger, because it's a different reach here, but then when you go to single action, it's a much shorter reach. Both these guns, trigger breaks pretty much right at the back of the trigger guard. Let me get that in frame so you can see a little better. Pretty much right at the back of the trigger guard. So between here and here is quite a bit different feeling. Big difference on the guns, you can kind of see here. This one has a loaded chamber indicator. This is the 75D compact. Has a loaded chamber indicator, so if you have a round, it'll pop up this little pin. The P01 does not have that. What's nice is there's nothing to interrupt the loading. So, like for example, if this little pin gets deformed or stuck or gets grit in it, it could mess up your loading, I guess. But again, this is a carry gun, so it's not going to be thrown around with dirt and all that. This gun doesn't have anything like that to mess it up. Sights on this gun are a little different. These are the standard CZ75 sights. I did modify the front sight. This one has a fiber optic front, and this one I put an aftermarket. It's I think it's a CZ sight, or sold by CZ, but it's a tritium front dot, so that's good. They also have glow-in-the-dark paint, but the paint is pretty terrible on both of these. There's a slight difference in the slide release, so the sorry about that, that's my chinchilla. The 75D has a slightly shorter slide release compared to the P01, which has a slightly longer, a slightly more aggressive stepped slide release. Also, on the opposite side, the P01 slide release, passenger side, I guess, is more regressed into the side of the gun versus the 75D, where it protrudes slightly more. Cool thing about that is it's easier to take down. Takedown's really easy. When you have the gun in single action and you decock it, it'll go to the half cock. This is where you're going to carry it all the time. To take it down, there's two little lines, 1, 2, on the slide in the frame. You have to line those up. If you're just kind of doing this with the hammer all the way back, it's hard to kind of line them up because there's spring resistance. Put it to the half cock, just push, it'll go right there. Then you have to push on the opposite end, right here, and it's not easy. So you can use a tool, or you can just use your knuckle and jam on it. You might get a little bloody knuckle, but that's fine. Pull the pin out, just like an H&K, and the slide comes off. Now again, both of these guns are not stock, so the weights are going to be a little off, but let's get a weight in here just to see what's going on. And then I'll talk about some of the modifications I've done. So unloaded, no magazine, the P01 on my scale is 702 grams. And the PCR, or the 75D compact, is 675. Not a big difference in weight. Most of that is due, I'm sure, just to the addition of the rail. But again, it's not that big a difference. Now, just for perspective, another great gun, H&K P2000 SK 9mm, again unloaded, is 611. So again, not that far off the 75D compact. Another piece of perspective, just because they're pretty much the same size, Glock 19, again unloaded, 620. So 75D compact is more than the Glock 19. When you're talking about capacity, everyone knows Glock 19 holds 15 rounds of 9mm. 75D compact, which is only available in 9mm, holds 14 rounds in the standard magazine. This is here a standard magazine. This one came with the gun, and it's loaded, so I'm not going to put it in, but it does have a rubber base pad on the bottom. You also can get Mech-Gar 14-round magazines. This is aftermarket, but these are as good or maybe a little better than the factory ones. This has a flat base pad, which barely sticks out at all. And then you can also get, let me see. Now this is a 10-round capacity, because they started coming out with these after I could buy magazines, but this is a 10-round. It's about the same size as the 14-round. There we go. It's about the same size as the 14-round stock. The base pad's pretty much the same protrusion out of the bottom of the gun, whereas the Mech-Gar would be, it's way off frame there. Just getting those lined up. That's what you'd be looking at. So I know the perspective's a little off, but here, this one's down another maybe not even 1/4 of an inch, maybe 1/8 of an inch. This Mech-Gar aftermarket mag, you can get, if you don't get the 10-round version, it comes in a 15-round version, so same as the Glock 19. These magazines do drop freely and rapidly out of the gun. There's no binding, no issue with any any of that on this gun. So I'm really happy about the magazines. Now, why do I want to carry a heavier gun than something like the Glock? Well, both of the P01 and the 75D Compact are great guns. What I like more about the guns are two big things. Number one, the grip on the 75D is incredibly ergonomic. CZ's, specifically the CZ75 line for me, is a very ergonomic grip. You've got a very nice beaver tail on the back here, which it's hard to show, but fits your hand oh so well. You can ride up on this really well. You're never going to get slide bite or hammer bite on this thing. And even though you have a kind of a higher riding slide, the bore axis is pretty much the same, and I did a video on that a long time ago. The Glock is a better bore axis, but the muzzle flip is pretty good on the CZ75. It's a very controllable gun to shoot. Also, I've done another video where I talk about why I like double action and single action pistols. I like this one as well. It's a very good gun, and it doesn't have a manual safety on here, so I can carry it in there. I can carry it in double action, and I can still get a pretty good trigger pull on here. Single action is fantastic. The Glock is a Glock trigger. It's nothing to write home about. Another reason that I carry the CZ75, not just ergonomics, not just the good trigger, but the added weight and the distribution of weight is very, very pleasant. There's a lot more weight in the grip, so it doesn't flip as much, and it's a very shootable, very controllable, light recoiling pistol. If you want to do follow-up shots, this is a great gun. If I only have 10 rounds and I'm going to stick with 9mm, let's show another 10-round 9mm pistol. You can see, by the way, the size. Even though the H&K is a little lighter, it's not that much smaller. You can see in the grip there's a difference, and it's a little shorter in barrel. The CZ, by the way, is a 3.75 or thereabouts inch barrel, so 3 1/4. H&K is a little shorter than that, but thickness, the H&K is pretty much the same. The CZ is really good. But absolutely the CZ is better at follow-up shots than the H&K. H&K flips a lot. So I'm going to talk about one more thing when it comes to the recoil and flipping impulse of the gun. So there's our scale again. I'm going to pull apart the CZ75. So to save time, I've broken down the guns to the Glock 19 slide, just the slide, and the internal firing components, all the stuff that would be doing reciprocating, and the CZ75 compact slide. And it's not a huge difference, but let's take a look at the weights. So the CZ75 is just about 300 grams, and the Glock 19, now granted this is a 19C, so there's even less reciprocating mass, it's about 350 grams. So you've got about a 50-gram difference between the slide on the Glock, heavier, and the bottom. Now, is that a lot of weight? Not really. But let's compare now the frames. 272 versus 143. So you can see the weight distribution is a lot more biased toward the frame weight. But the lighter recoiling slide actually has a very nice recoil impulse. Lighter weight slide, I'm sorry, has a nicer recoil impulse. It doesn't cause the gun to flip as much because you don't have as much mass slapping the back of the frame. While I've got these apart, you can see the inside of the CZ75 compact frame is essentially unfinished. You've got a nice trigger bar in there, which you can see moving back and forth. I haven't done anything to the bottom of this gun except changing the grips, and I have changed a lighter weight hammer spring. It's called the mainspring inside this gun. I have changed to a lighter weight one of those. On the upper end of the gun, I have done a couple of changes. There's a pin right here on It goes through both sides by the rear sight. That pin is a roll pin that holds in the firing pin, and that can get dinged up. I actually have two new ones, because two CZs here from Cajun Gunworks, just came in today actually, and I'm going to be replacing that at some point. Those roll pins will get damaged if you do a lot of dry fire. Not that big of a deal. They'll be hard to drive out, but you know, it is what it is. The guide rod here is a stainless guide rod, and this is a stock weight flat wire recoil spring. This is pretty similar to the stock piece. I also have an aftermarket plastic guide rod, and you can see how this is the one that came with the gun. It's already a little twisted and bent. This is the stock one, and it's okay. It's not, I mean, it's not going to break terribly or anything. This is an extra power recoil spring, because I was running higher power rounds in here for a while, because I was carrying it with core bonds. But as I'm going to do more target shooting, I went back to a stock recoil spring. You can see again here the full length of the rail. On the outside of the slide is that shiny piece, and it goes all the way down the gun, all the way on the inside of the frame. So anywhere there would be contact, it goes. Putting that together, same thing. Put it right to that edge. Take your slide release, put it through. There you go. Putting the Glock back together, lots of people know how to do that. Easy peasy. There you go. Overall, they're a great set of guns. This is a holster I got off of eBay, and this is for the P01. You can see the P01 fits in here very nicely. The 75D, there's not a lot of holsters made for the 75D compact, but it fits in here just fine. Even though there's that extra space for the rail up here, that does nothing for holstering or unholstering, so everything else is a perfect fit. Most polymer holsters will fit, however, because you have a slightly longer takedown pin, I don't know why they do this on the 75D right here, because you have a slightly longer protrusion from the passenger side of the frame. I guess you might have some frame fit issues, but you can see also the slide release is, there you go, is a little further, maybe it's not further protruding, it's further forward on the 75D and further back on the P01. So there you go. Overall, these are two great pistols, and if you're looking for something other than a Glock 19, you want to be a little kind of counterculture, they're good. Changing components, trigger components, stuff like that is not as easy on these guns as they are on something like a Glock, definitely. Totally doable. I've done a lot more work on the P01. P01 has an aftermarket trigger, aftermarket sear, aftermarket grips, mainspring, different steel roll pin, aftermarket front sight, same spring and guide rod in here, and I can't think of anything. Oh, and a different trigger pin in here, a solid trigger pin instead of the rolled pin on the stock CZ. This one only has the mainspring, tritium front sight, and the grips. Oh, and then the guide rod, and then the stock weight spring on here. Other than that, they're still really good guns. If you get a chance to shoot a CZ75, they're fantastic. But again, none of that really matters if you, I'm pulling a grand thumb here, none of that really matters if you don't actually get out to the range and shoot. Make sure you take your time, practice, especially because of these. You have that double action pull, and then a different single action pull. That's something you're going to have to practice a lot. And with ammo, hard to find nowadays, do a lot of dry fire. Throw a snap cap in any of these guns when you're going to fire them, because it can save that little roll pin right there. But other than that, you can also put an O-ring in the back to keep the hammer from dropping. But again, there, I don't really care that much. It's a part that I have extras of, and I check them periodically. So, hope you enjoyed the video. 2 great guns overview if you have a chance to find one of these. On the used market, they're still pretty expensive, but if you can find one, I found this one used. If you can find them on the used market, they're great guns. They'll last a lifetime, and really accurate, really easy to shoot, and something about owning some Eastern European awesome steel, steel and aluminum. It's good. So anyway, I've been rambling a lot, but thank you for watching the video. Appreciate it, guys. See ya. Stay safe out there. Last little piece. I was loading up my guns, and I remembered something that I forgot to mention in the video. So this is a snap cap, and I'm going to try to load it into the 75 Compact D. So I just dropped it into the chamber. This is not recommended, by the way, but I dropped it into the chamber, and the gun will not load from this location. The reason for that is that loaded chamber indicator right here. That's a little pin on the inside of the chamber, so when the round loads from the bottom, that pin gets pushed up. I'll see if I can show you pretty easily here. Give me 1 second. There. So you can see the pin right here, right above the firing pin. And this has to get pushed up, and then when it gets pushed up, it'll protrude there, at the top of the slide. However, it'll interrupt the it won't allow your round to get loaded in if you just push it straight from the back. So if the slide is closing on a piece of brass, it has to come up from the bottom and get pushed like that. So that's probably why it's not a component on the P01, because one of the requirements of a lot of NATO guns is so that you can load them from the breech instead of having to load from a magazine. So I'm going to put the snap cap in a magazine here. I'm going to put my gun back together. And instead, I'm going to load it from the magazine, and it worked fine. So that's that. This is a really good carry gun. If I was using something for duty, I would use probably the P01. But again, great pistol. Anyway, stay safe out there. See ya.